Mhm. Okay, so I've sent you a Word document.
Ndaseta document reword.
It's the Advent Review and Sabbath Herald article from A.T. Jones that
Article reAdvent
I've been
Review and
discussing
Sabbath
with
Herald.
yourselves
Randa
a
ndikutaura
couple of
nemi
times. And
kwenguva
I'd just like
yakawanda.
to talk through some of the paragraphs.
Ndoda kuti tingotaura nemamwe
We're okay to
maparagraphs
do that.
acho kana zviri right kuzviita.
So the document's been sent to you on the East Coast Forum.
Rasendwa kwamuri kuEast Coast Forum.
Yeah, that'd be good. So I know everybody's in a slightly different time zone. For our time zone, we have Sabbath coming in around 42 minutes.
Ndoziva
So
kuti vanhu vari mumatime
if you can
zone
remember at our end,
akasiyana-siyana.
we'll probably have a short
Sabata
stop,
rokutanga minutes 42.
pray to open Sabbath, and then
Tichambomira
we'll carry
tovhura
on for a little
Sabata.
bit. But I don't want to keep
Tozoenderera
everybody too
mberi.
long.
Asi
Try
handisida
not to go
kuti
more than an hour
vanhu varambe
in
varipo
our
nguva
devotion.
yakareba.
And we'll try and have a
Handisida
different setup tomorrow. That
tifurikidze hour mudevotion
have
yedu.
a play around to try and get the audio working a little bit better.
Mangwana tichazama kuti audio inge ichishandawo zviri nani.
Okay, so I think that's giving everybody enough time to open that document up.
Izvi zvapa vanhu nguva kuti vavhure document iroro.
Let's open with a word of prayer.
Ngativhurei nemunamato.
Holy God, we thank you for your goodness, your watch care over your people.
Mwari vatsvene tinokutendai
I
nekunaka
ask and pray that you would guide
nekutarira
and
kwamunoita
direct
vanhu
and
vese.
bless us so
Tungamirirai
that we might
nekutikomborera kuitira
honor
kuti
you and glorify you
tikukudzei
as each of
nekupambiri
us
kwamuri.
prepare
Umwe
to
neumwe
open Sabbath
paanenge achigadzirira
in
kuvhura
our
Sabata
separate homes, in
kudzimba
our own
dzedu
way.
dzakasiyana-siyana nenzira dzedu
May you
dzakasiyana-siyana.
be pleased with the worship that we offer you,
Dei mainga
and may
fara
we enjoy
nerumbidzo
the
yatinokupai
experience
tigo
of
enjoyawo
fellowshipping with you this
experience
evening.
yekufellowshipa nemi
Bless us in
usiku
this
huno.
study in
Tikomborerewo
Jesus' name.
muchidzidzo ichi
Amen.
muzita raJesu. Amen.
So I don't know how many people have read through this article
Handisi kuti vanhu
following
vangani
last week's camp meeting.
vakaverenga article iri tichiteverera camp meeting
I know
yevhiki
that many
rapfuura.
people hadn't watched the presentation,
Ndoziva
hadn't
kuti
read the article
vanhu
when I asked
vakawanda
about it last week.
vanga
So
vasina
I don't know if anybody
kuverenga
has.
article iri patakabvunza last week, saka
Shout
handisi
out
kuti
if
kune
you've
vakazokwanisa
had an
kuverenga
opportunity
here.
to watch it since then.
Ndiudzei kana
Alyssa has
makakwanisawo
not watched it, read it, sorry. Alyssa's read it
Elisa
since the camp meeting.
akariverengawo
It's
kubva
very
pacamp
long,
meeting.
it's 8 pages, but it's a really good read.
Rine mapeji akareba asi kuverenga
The members in
kwakanaka.
Australia, I don't know if they recorded it or not, but they've been doing this for the last maybe 4 months for their prayer meetings.
Mamembers
They've
ekuaustralia
gone through the
vanga vari
document
kuita
systematically,
document
week by
iyi
week, different
kwemamonths
people
4.
presenting
Vanhu
as far as they
week
need
by
to get in
week
any one paragraph,
vanhu vanga
and
vachipresent
then
document irori.
the next person follows on.
Mumwe anotevera achizoteverawo.
So I just want to check something.
Saka ndoda kungocheka chimwe chinhu.
Okay, so the title of the passage is The Gospel.
Title yepassage
What is the
inoti
gospel,
ivhangeri. Ivhangeri
and how does it compare to the mystery of
uye
iniquity?
rinofananidzwa sei nemystery of iniquity.
I don't know if anybody's got any thoughts,
Handisi kuti pane
introductory thoughts
pfungwa
before we
here
begin.
dzekutangisa tisati tatanga.
Okay, so if no one has, I hope you don't mind me asking questions.
Kana
If you
musina
don't want to participate, just
I
say you're not going to answer the question and I'll ask someone else. Hope that's
munodai
okay with
nekubvunzwa
everybody.
mubvunzo kana musingaparticipate munongotaura kuti hamisi kuparticipata. Ndoimba kuti zvakanaka kumunhu wese izvi.
Linda,
Linda,
if I were to ask you what the mystery of iniquity is, what would your answer be?
ndikakubvunza kuti mystery of iniquity chii, mhinduro yako inenge iri yekuti kudii?
You have to unmute.
Okay. Well, I used to think of it in terms of the papacy
ndenchifunga
years back, but
nenyaya maererano nemupapasi
I'm not sure how I would define it.
asi handisi kuti
So I don't know if everybody can hear, but Linda
ndinotsanangura
said that she used
ndichiti
to understand it in terms of the papacy,
linda ati ainzwisisa
but she's no
maererano
longer able to
nepapasi
understand
asi
or explain it
haachakwanisi
now.
kuinzwisisa kana kuitsanangura
Why would it not be
izvezvi
the papacy now, Linda, for you? Why is it? Why have you drifted away from the papacy?
nei ichinge isisiri papasi linda sei yabva
Okay.
kupapasi
Well, we know the Sunday law, the Sunday law, the nature of the Sunday law has changed.
tinoziva kuti chimiro chesunday law chashanduka
Okay, so you said no Sunday law.
saka wati haisi sunday law
Literal Sunday law.
iri literal
Yep, Sunday.
So it's a different controversy now. It's a
saka
different test.
yahondo yakasiyana yatest
Say
yakasiyana
that again. You said something, and then you said different test. What was the first thing? A different
It's a different controversy now. It's a different test.
controversy. Different controversy, different test.
test yakasiyana
Of course, we know Protestantism was always supposed to be,
tinoziva kuti
what brought in
protestantism
the Sunday law issue in the end time. And
Okay,
ndo
let me ask you a
yakaunza
slightly
sunday
different
law
question then.
yokupedzesera
So
yakandikufunze
back in
mumwe
the day,
mubvunzo
why
saka
was it the
kare
papacy?
sei yakanga iri papasi
Why was the papacy the mystery of iniquity back when you used to think it was? What was your argument then?
sei yakanga
If
iri
we're not going to discuss
papasi
it now, why the changes?
kare
Why was it
ikoko
the mystery of iniquity back
tomboti
in the
hatina
day?
kuchinja
for
sunday
you?
law mystery of iniquity yairi
Well,
kare ikoko
we were going by the writings in the Great Controversy, which are
kana
talking about
tichitaurisa
the
zvakanyorwa
issues of
mugreat
Ellen White's
controversy
time. And,
nguva
I
yaellen
guess
white
most Adventists, are still
maadventist
taking that
akawanda
to be,
vachiri kungozvitora
the problem that's going to happen in
richiri
our time.
dambudziko richaitika munguva
And
yedu
we no longer think along those lines.
hatichafundi
We understand
malainzi
that
wayo tinonzwisisa kuti
the problem really
dambudziko
is
Not
having to do
now,
with
before. Why
Kwete
was the papacy
zvinezvi
the mystery of iniquity
kare
before?
sei papasi inga iri
Tell me the
mystery of
marker for that.
iniquity ndiudze chinomaka zvinhu izvozvo
gosh, it's been so long.
nguva yatirebei
Well, Paul indicated that didn't he indicate that it was something that was happening even in his time?
He did.
paul
Yeah.
akaindiketa kuti
Yeah.
chinhu chachiri kuitika munguva yakewo zvakare
So because of that statement that Paul makes, we in the movement
saka nekutaura
many years
kunoitwa
ago understood
napaul
that the mystery of iniquity
isu
was
mumovement
more than the papacy. It was a
tainzwisisa
bigger
kuti
issue.
mystery of iniquity yakakura kupfuura
Yeah.
But if
papasi
you're happy
chaiva
with the
chinhu
papacy, let me offer
chakakura
something and you
asi
tell
kana
me
uchifara
if
nepapasi
this
rega
resonates
ndikupe
with
chimwe
you.
chinhu
So
undudzwa kuti
we would say the papacy
zvinowirirana
is
newe
the
here
mystery of
taiti
iniquity
papasi ndiyo
because it
mystery of
offers
iniquity nekuti
a
inopa
false alternative
alternative yemanyepo
to the seal of God.
kusiu
That's what
yamwari
Pastor goes on.
Yeah. Yeah.
That sound okay?
ndizvozvo
Yeah.
Okay. So the mystery of iniquity,
saka mystery
I'm
of
going to say,
iniquity ndichati
following what you're saying, I'm trying to repeat what you say.
chitevera
You said it's the
zvawataura
papacy,
wati papasi
and the reason is
mhaka
because
ndeyekuti
of Sunday.
inyaya yesande
And Sunday
uye sande
is a false Sabbath.
isabata rekunyepedzera
You okay with that?
zviri right here izvi
If the Sabbath is the seal of God,
kana sabata riri siu
it's a
yamwari
marker for our righteousness,
imaka yekururama kwedu
then if someone's going to offer an alternative
kana mumwe munhu akatipa
sign of our
alternative sign
righteousness or a different
yekururama
seal,
kwedu
it
kana
then would be a
seal
different day.
yakasiyana inenge iri zuva
That sound
rakasiyana
okay?
Okay.
izvo here
So then you've got the comparison
uzova
between
newekufananidza
Sunday
pakati pesunday
and Sabbath.
nesabath
Does that sound sort of familiar to the logic that you would have used?
izvi zvakafanana here
Okay,
nelogic
yeah.
yaimboshandiswa
So if
ndizvozvo
you're going to do that,
kana uchizoita
then
izvozvo
Sunday,
then
which is a
sunday
mystery of iniquity,
inova
would be
mystery of
a
iniquity
false what?
inenge iri chii chekunyepedzera
Carol? Oh, someone said? Someone said something. A false Sabbath.
inenge iri
So I'm
sabata
going to put false here
remanyepo
as well.
saka ndichanyora kuti manyepo
Unfortunately, the people
panapa
here can't see what I'm doing, which I've
vanhu
just
vari
figured
pano
out.
havasi kuona kuti ndikuita sei
Oh, we could have done, yes. So the answer isn't Sabbath.
kana
It's a
mindiro
false,
isiri sabbath
the false worship I'm going to call it a
kunamata
false
kwekunyepa
gospel.
ndichataura kuti ivhangeri yemanyepo.
So we have a false gospel and a true gospel.
Saka tine ivhangeri yemanyepo neivhangeri yechokwadi.
Okay with that, Linda?
Zviriitire izvi, Linda.
And what's the subject of this article?
Subject yearticle iyi ndeipi?
Let me look.
Don't read the title out. I want a concept.
Usaverenga title, ndoda concept.
Basically, the mystery of iniquity is the opposite of the gospel.
Kuti
Good.
mystery of
So
iniquity
Jones is going
opposite
to define what the
yeivhangeri.
gospel is.
Saka Jones
He asked, what
achatitsanangura
is
kuti
it?
ivhangeri
And
chii,
then what he's
anobvunza
going to
kuti
do
chii.
is compare it
Zvaanozoita
or contrast it
anoifananidza
to the mystery of
nekusiyanisa
iniquity.
nemystery of iniquity.
And in simple terms, we could say
Kutaura kuri nyore togona
Adventism
kutaura kuti Adventism
versus,
versus
anybody shout
chii.
out?
Mumwe munhu ngaataure.
Troy?
Troy.
Adventism versus what?
Adventism versus chii.
Catholicism?
Good.
Versus
Adventism versus Catholicism or the
Adventism
papacy.
versus
Sabbath
papacy kana
versus
Catholicism.
Sunday. The
Sabbath
true
versus
gospel
Sunday.
versus the false gospel.
Ivhangeri
Are we all
yechokwadi
okay with that?
versus
Does
yemanyepo.
that
Zviri
make a
right
little
here
bit of
izvi?
sense?
Zvinomeka sense here izvi?
Okay. So if the Sabbath is the true,
Kana sabata riri
what is Sunday? What
razvokwadi.
word do we say if Sabbath
Sunday
is the true?
chi.
What would Sunday be?
Ivara
John,
ribra
would you like
tinotaura
to venture an
Sunday
answer?
chi. John unoda kupindura here.
Sunday would be the false.
Sunday ndo
Would be a
inenge iri
false, a different
yemanyepo.
word to false.
Rimwe vari rakasiyana nerekuti manyepo.
Please ask somebody. I'm not sure.
That's fine. Mary, do you have a thought?
Mary une pfungwa here?
The counterfeit.
Hanzi counterfeit.
Yep, I know you knew that, John. It's a word that we use all the time.
John, iri
So
vara ratinoshandisa
we know that the
nguva dzese.
papacy
Tosiva
back
kuti
in the day
papacy
was the
kare
counterfeit
yaiva
of
counterfeit
Adventism,
yeAdventism.
and the marker for that would be
Maka
the day of
yaizvozvo
worship.
inenge iri zuva rekunamata.
So I don't know if you remember what Linda said
Saka handisi kana
in her
tichirangarira
introductory thoughts when I
zvataurwa
asked her. I
naLinda
said,
pakutanga
what is the mystery
pandamubvunza
of
kuti
iniquity?
mystery
And
of
she said it
iniquity
used to
chii?
be the
Akati
papacy.
yaimbova papacy.
And that I understood her to say
Izvozvo
that
ndanzwisisa
today
achiti
she would
nhasi
not say the mystery of iniquity is the
haangati mystery
papacy.
of
She would
iniquity
say it's
papacy.
something else.
Anotaura kuti chimwe chinhu.
So I don't know what the something else would be
Saka
today.
handisi
She
kuti
said
chimwe chinhu chinenge
different,
chiri chii?
I think she said different controversy,
Ati
different test. Was
ihondo
it, I think those two words?
yakasiyana.
Yeah. So
Itest yakasiyana. Ndo mavara ashandisa.
I'll ask someone here in the group,
Chafundisa
what,
munhu ari mugroup.
what would you say the mystery of iniquity
Iwewe
is?
unoti mystery of iniquity chii?
Or who it is?
Kana kuti ndiani?
Let's make it a different question. Who is the gospel today?
Ivhangeri
Yesterday, the
ndiani
gospel was
nhasi? Nezuro
Adventism.
ivhangeri yaiva
The
Adventism.
counterfeit was the papacy.
Counterfeit iri
Today,
papacy.
who is the
Nhasi
gospel? To make it
ivhangeri
into a person.
ndiani? Kana
If you do chats, I
tikaita
won't be able to
munhu.
see them. So please just unmute and shout out an answer. Work really quickly.
The movement is the gospel?
Movement ndiyo ivhangeri.
Who is it?
Emmanuel.
Yes or no? What's your answer?
The movement is the gospel.
The movement. Good. So if the movement is the
Kana
gospel,
movement iriyo
what's the
ivhangeri.
counterfeit? Who is the counterfeit?
Counterfeit ndiani?
So I'm going to write the true gospel,
Saka ndichanyora kuti ivhangeri yachokwadi.
and I'm not talking about the subject. I'm talking about the person
Asi kutaura
is the movement.
nezvesubject, kutaura nezvemunhu wacho.
And the
Ndiye
next
movement.
question is, who is the
Mubvunzo
false
wangu
gospel
unotevera ndewekuti
or the
ko
counterfeit
yemanyepo
gospel?
ndiani kana kuti counterfeit gospel ndiani?
Counterfeit
Has to
movement?
be a person or an entity.
Afanira kunge ari munhu kana kuti entity.
Counterfeit movement?
A counterfeit government. So
Hurumende
you have to
iri
tell me who the
counterfeit.
government is. You can't just say
Unofanira
a
kundudza kuti
counterfeit government.
hurumende yacho ndiani? Haungangoti hurumende iri counterfeit.
I would say the false prophet.
Indichati
The false
muprofita
prophet. So
wenhema.
the false prophet is a good answer,
Saka
but
muprofita wenhema
I would like,
imhinduro
that
yakanaka.
would be the same as saying the true gospel isn't the movement.
Asi
I'm
zvakufanira
going to
kuti
say it's
ivhangeri
the stone.
yechokwadi haisi
So
movement,
that would be a
chati
symbol.
idombo.
The
Inenge
stone would
iri
be a
symbol.
symbol, and the
Dombo rinenge
movement
riri
would be the
symbol.
actual thing.
Movement ndicho
So the
chinhu
false
chacho
gospel,
chaicho.
if you're going to
Saka
use a
ivhangeri
symbol, you
yemanyepo
can say
kana
the false
uchishandisa
prophet,
symbol
but I
unogona
want
kuti
to have
false
an
prophet
actual
hongu.
thing.
Asi toda kuti
So I
tinge
put
tine
false
chinhu
prophet
chaicho
there.
chaicho. Saka ndaisa false prophet apa.
What do you mean about an entity like one person, one name,
You can
one
either give an individual
nation?
name or you can give Namibia, if you like. Hope there's no
Unogona
Namibians
kupa
here.
zita
It
remunhu
could be
individual kana kuti unogona kuti Namibia
I would,
Fiji.
kana
I would say
chimwe chinhu.
Protestantism, United States,
Ndogona kuti
that's what I would.
Protestantism kana
You
kuti
said
United
USA
States
and
wati
you said
USA
Protestantism.
ukati Protestantism.
Do you want the mountain or the Adventism also?
Okay, so Gloria said Adventism. Who else did you say?
Gloria ati Adventism
Mountain versus the
kana
stone.
kuti
there.
gomo
Okay, so
versus stone.
Gloria said false prophet. She also said mountain.
Gloria ati false prophet. ati
Gloria, if you're going to put
zvakare
mountain,
gomo.
who else do you have to put?
Gloria
You're in Daniel
ukaisa
2.
gomo apa unofana kuisa ani zvakare nokuti
I
tiri
would
muna
put the
Daniel 2.
stone.
The stone is the good one.
Dombo ndo rakanaka.
Okay, everyone here is
the
shouting out
statue.
statue. The statue is the right answer.
Statue ndo mhinduro iri correct.
So you could have the mountain or the statue.
Chanogona kuisa gomo
So
kana
how many
statue.
counterfeits do you now have?
Saka unewa nemacounterfeit makani
According to Daniel 2?
maererano naDaniel 2.
2. So let's,
Nekuva
if we use the
nemaviri.
imagery of Daniel 2,
Saka
we've got
tikashandisa mufananidzo wekuna Daniel 2
counterfeits.
tine macounterfeit
So
maviri.
the mountain is whom in
Saka
real life?
gomo ndiani muzvokwadi.
Okay, so Adventism
Ndiyo Adventism.
is good. So we know
Adventism
Adventism
iri good.
is
Toziva
the
kuti
counterfeit.
ndiyo counterfeit.
Everybody agree with that?
Unese ari kutenderana nazvo here?
Okay, who's the other counterfeit then?
Umwe counterfeit
We know it's
ndiani
the
zvakare?
statue.
Toziva
Who is
kuti
the statue?
istatue. Statue ndiani?
The institution.
Babylon?
The institutions
Mwati
of Babylon.
ma-institution eBabylon.
If we were to put Babylon,
Kana taisa Babylon apa,
Babylon is a complicated entity.
Babylon
So let's break
i-entity
down Babylon
complicated.
into some parts.
Saka
Who
ngatiipatsanurei
can break
kuisa
down Babylon?
maparts
First, tell me
akasiyana
how many parts you want to break
Budze
Babylon
kuti munoda
into.
kubreka Babylon kuita
Babylon the
maparts
Great.
akawanda
How many
sei?
parts is it?
Babylon the Great ine maparts
Anybody?
akawanda sei?
Just shout out a number.
Napaine munhu anogona kutidaidzirira
Kathy says
namba.
2 parts.
Kefe ati maviri.
Isn't it
Shout out,
3?
don't put your hands up.
Isn't it 3?
Umwe
Isn't it
akati
3?
matatu.
Gloria says 3. Someone else said 3.
Umwe ati
Bob?
matatu.
Bob says 10. Bob's going for toes,
Umwe ati 10.
I presume.
Bob ari kuenda kuzvigunwe ndofunga.
Okay, I'm going to go for 3
Ndichati 3.
because I think you'll find that the 10 fit into the 3.
Nokuti
And obviously 2 would fit into the 3.
10
What are the 3 parts?
Matatu aya matatu
The
aya
Give the
first
ndani.
symbols
pro-
first, if you like.
Dragon,
the
beast,
fa-
false prophet.
Good.
Yes.
Dragon, beast, and the false prophet.
Une
So someone
dragon,
already said the false
beast,
prophet right
ne-false
back here. I can't
prophet.
remember who
Pane munhu
said that,
atoti
but
false
that's correct.
prophet apo.
So we've got the false prophet, the beast, and the
Tine
dragon.
false
Who's the
prophet,
dragon?
beast nedragon. Dragon ndiani?
Who wants to venture who the dragon is?
Ndinoda kuzama
UN,
kutiudza kuti
the
dragon
world.
chii.
Okay, so Claudio said the UN.
Claudio ati iUN.
So if we're the good people,
Kana tiri vanhu
the true,
vakanaka
is the
vechokwadi.
UN our counterfeit?
UN i-counterfeit
Is the
here
UN
yedu.
against us
Iri
or with us?
kutipikisa here kana kuti inesu.
Okay, so I don't know. That I think that was Lily. Lily said the UN is with us,
Lily ati
and I
UN
guess she
inesu.
might be using the argument
Ndofunga kuti ari
of
kushandisa
the
argument
UN Declaration of Human Rights,
ye-UN
what
declaration
the
yema-human
UN
rights.
ethos is,
Ethos
an organization
ye-UN
of
kuti
peace and
chii?
not war, of
I-organization
inclusiveness, not
ye-peace
divisiveness.
kwete
So I'm
hondo
going to erase the UN. I think we've
yeku-includa
learned in the
kwete
movement
yeku-divide.
that the UN is
Saka
not our
tichapisa
enemy.
UN. Ndofunga kuti takadzidza kuti
In a certain
UN
situation, a
haisi
certain
enemy yedu.
circumstance, it might be co-opted
Mune mamwe
to be
masituation
against us,
nemacircumstance
but it
inogona
really
kugadzirwa
isn't the
kunge iri
dragon
against
in the
isusu
way
asi
that this
haisi riyo
movement used to
government
think that it was,
nenzira
and
iyo
Adventism still
movement
does.
yaifunga kuti iri
Adventism
dragon.
would mark two entities
Adventism
as the
ichiri
dragon.
kufunga
It
kuti
would be the
UN
10, and you
i-dragon
can either go
inomaka
to the
maentity
EU,
maviri
which people love to
inomaka
hate,
10
because of the
inogona
Tower of
kuvakawo futi
Babel. In
EU
which city
nekuda
is the
kwetower
Tower of
of
Babel?
Babel. Tower of Babel iri muguta ripi?
Lucerne? I don't think it's in Lucerne. Which city?
Bruxelles.
Guta ripi?
Oh, you might be right because Claudia said the same thing. Oh, maybe I'm wrong. Let me have a quick look. I thought it was somewhere else.
Geneva?
Someone said Geneva.
Kana ati Geneva.
Okay, I thought, I'm sorry, you're all wrong. I knew it was something else. It's in France, I believe.
iri kufrance ndofunga
Strasbourg.
kustrasburg
Is that Germany? Oh, you could be right.
kana
Forget
kuti
the country.
germany
They can't say it sounds like a German country. That's not going to work. Okay, so we've got Strasbourg. Hopefully, we're all okay with
saka tine
Strasbourg.
strasburg
So we used
ndofunga
to
kuti
say it has to be the EU because they're an evil entity and the UN.
saka
But who is
vaiti
the dragon
inogona
power?
kunge iri un
It's neither of them.
neeuropean entity saka dragon power ndiyani hapana pakati pavo vese ava
Dragon is state.
dragon
If we're
ndiyo
okay with
state
that.
kana zvakatinakira
All the beasts
mabeasts
are
ese
state entities. They're not
ma-state
religious
entities
entities,
haazi ma-religious entity
kind of. Dragon is
dragon
who's the funniest government in the world? I
hurumende
would say
iri
the worst
fani
one, the funniest one.
iri fani munyika yese ndeipi
United States.
iyo
Good. We'll go with that
united
one.
states orit totora iyoyo
So Bob says he thought the US was the false prophet.
bob ati aifunga kuti
Right.
us yaiva false prophet
Apparently, we're going to blame Elder Pippinger for that one.
pamwe togona
There you go.
kublama elder pipinja pamusoro pazvo
I'm pretty sure Elder Pippinger got it correct. He
ndovimba
wouldn't have said
kuti
it's the United
elder
States.
pipinja vakazviwana
Maybe.
zviri correct vaigona kuti united states maybe
The false prophets,
false prophet
what's their job?
basa ravo nderei
It's in the title.
zviri mumusoro menyaya
No, not that bit. Someone said lies. The other bit, the
Mwati
title.
kunye-
The what? Prophets.
maprofita
Is prophets state or religion?
maprofita istate here kana kuti chitete.
Religion. You
Hanzi
go to the
chitete.
second story. They're not
Woenda
false
kunyaya
prophets. It's
yechipiri,
who?
havasi
Which is
ma-false
a
prophets.
lovely one.
Ndiani?
Give another one for false prophet.
tikati tipe
The other
imwe
story.
nyaya yefalse prophet
Balaam?
No, not Balaam.
umwe ati balaam zvikanzi kwete
I'll give you a clue.
ndichakupai
It's a lady,
mudzimai
not Jezebel,
kwete jezebel
not Herodias,
kwete herodias
not Mary.
Salome? Salome?
Salome,
umwe ati salome
Okay.
because the false prophet served whom?
nekuti false prophet
Someone shouted out that name before. The false prophet served whom?
Jezebel.
Jezebel.
aisefa
And Salome serves?
salome anosefa
Herodias?
Good.
herodias
So the false prophets
Saka-
end up becoming the equivalent
ma-false
of the
prophets
daughter.
anopedzisira aenzana
And
nemwana
who is the daughter?
mwana ndiani
Apostate Protestantism. So we're all together?
iapostate protestantism saka taapo mwe chete here
Is Elder Jeff forgiven? Yes or no will help? We forgive Elder Jeff. We're on the
tinoregerera
same
elder
page.
jeff
Amen.
Amen.
So this is Protestantism.
saka iyi protestantism
We had it right here, Protestantism.
Taiva
Okay, the
nayo
beast
apa
is who?
Protestantism. Saka apa beast ndiani
You know that one.
kwete iyeye
Linda
Papacy.
gave us the answer. Who is that, Linda? Who's the beast?
ndiani beast
The papacy?
Good.
Hanzi
Yes.
There you go.
ndisvozvo
That's why I asked. Rob said that's where you started. That's why I asked you. So you said the
That's what
papacy
Pawatangira
was the
wati
counterfeit in
papacy.
the past, or
Ndoyava
the mystery of
counterfeit
iniquity in the
card,
past.
kana kuti
And what is
mystery
it
of
today?
iniquity card. Nhasi ichi
They're all whispering for you, Linda.
vese vari kungozevesera
It's the same.
yakafanana
Yep. I can't remember what year, but what is Elder Tess going to stand up and say the counterfeit is? It's whom?
handichazivi kuti gore ripasi eldatesi
The papacy. She's on public record to tell us that. But they're not the only counterfeit.
asi havasirivo vega counterfeit
If we're okay with that,
kana
I want to add a complexity. I want to call it
kuwedzera
3A.
ndoda kuinyora ichiti 3a
Now, if you go to the US,
ukasvika kuus
or you go to the papacy,
unotoenda
or you go
kupapasi
to
kana kuti woenda
Protestantism,
kuprotestantism
that counterfeit, you've got two
Counterfeit
people
iyoyo, vanhu
fighting,
vaviri
the
vanenge
true and the
vachiisana.
counterfeit. We okay with that?
nechokwadi necounterfeit zvakanaka here
So,
izvo
who's the, if you're going to do a counterfeit, you
Kana
must be
uchiita
trying to
counterfeit,
deceive
unofana
somebody,
kuzama
if we're okay with that.
mumwe munhu.
So the
Kana
question is,
zvakanaka
who is
izvo.
the somebody?
Mubvunzo
I'm going to
ndewekuti
change it
ndiani
from
iyeye?
somebody
Tichachandura kubva kuti pane munhu
to target audience.
kuenda kutarget audience.
Who's the target audience
Ndiani target
For-
audience
the USA?
kuUSA?
Shout that, Lena.
Lena,
Can you type it out? My audio is really bad. I can't hear you. I can't.
The
allow-
Democrats.
Anti
Oh, wait there. Let me see
Democrats.
if I can do this.
Liberals.
She said liberals.
Okay, say that again. Liberals. Someone said liberals.
Anti
Liberals or
liberal.
Democrats. I think it's liberals or Democrats.
Anti
Okay,
liberals.
liberals and Democrats. I guess because you're all American, you're going to Americanize everything.
Nekuti muri vekuamerica muchangoita zvinhu zvese zvinge zviri
But-
zveamerica.
We serve an international movement, so we won't do that.
International movement saka hatichaiti izvozvo.
Okay, so I don't know what I've done here. I've just messed my screen up. Pin that. Okay, I'm going to say
Indichati.
oh, give me 1 second. I just want to try and get my. I've lost my connection somehow. My whiteboard, so no one can see my whiteboard. Oh. Give me a second. I just need to log in on my iPad again because I've lost connection. Hopefully you can all remember what I said a moment ago.
Ndimba ticharangarira zvandataura pandabva kutaura.
Leave me in some. I'm going to rejoin. I'm trying to log in, yeah. Do I need permission to log in?
No. You need the password again?
No, he's accepted it. He's just waiting.
Permission.
Okay, I'm going to move on because I don't want to take too much time. for
What I
today.
found in our problem here is you have to not click on the link. You have to actually open Zoom and then type in this meeting number and the passcode. And that's what finally fixed it for us. I don't know
Okay.
if that will work.
So you don't have a digital whiteboard. So my question is, who's the target audience for the USA? And I'm going to say it's the world.
Audience yeUSA.
Or I want to use the term Nethinims.
Kana kuti ndichashandisa variri kuti Nethinims.
Who's the target audience for the papacy?
Target audience yepapacy ndiani?
People here they're saying it's the same. The
Vanhu vari
Nethinims.
kuti ndivo vakafanana.
And who's the target
maNethinims.
audience for the Protestants?
Ko target audience yemaprotestants
Everybody's saying it's the same.
vanhu vari kuti ndo vamwe chete ivavo.
So whether you talk about the dragon, the beast, or the false
Saka
prophet,
pese
the
panotaura
target audience
nezvedragon,
is all
beast ne false
Nethinims.
prophets.
So I
Target
want to add
audience
a
inongova
3A to that.
maNethinims.
Who would be
Toda
the
kuedzera
3A,
3A ipapo.
the fourth or the counterfeit?
Ndiani
Who wants to venture that one?
counterfeit yechi4 kana kuti yatiri kuti 3A ndiani ada kuzama kupindura.
Who's the most famous organization in your life?
Organization inonyanyozikamwa muupenyu hwenyu ndeipi?
The ones that shaped and molded all your experience.
Vakavaka
SDA
nekumouta
Church.
The
experience
SDA Church, good.
the SDA Church zvakanaka.
And right here, do you remember we said? Oh, so you can't see my digital whiteboard. Someone said the counterfeit was Adventism because they said in symbology it was what?
Umwe munhu akati counterfeit yaiva Adventism nekuti vakati musymbology
It
yaiva
was the
chii?
mountain.
Yaiva gomo.
Good. So we already had it.
Saka
So we
taitova
got
nayo
this.
kare.
That's how we got the dragon, beast, and false
Ndo
prophet. Dragon, beast,
patakaona
and false
dragon
prophet is
beast
what?
false prophet.
Daniel 2.
Ichi
The statue. It's
statue
Babylon.
Babylon.
And then the
Daniel 2.
mountain
Then
also
gomo.
becomes a counterfeit.
Inozovawo
So now
zvakare
we've got two
Saka
counterfeits.
tine macounterfeit maviri.
We've got the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. Three separate entities,
Dragon
which we can
beast
call
ne false
Babylon,
prophet.
which we can
Maentity
call the
akasiyana
statue,
anogona
and
kudaidza
that
kuti
becomes a
Babylon kana kuti
counterfeit
statue
to what?
inozova counterfeit kuchii?
To whom?
Nani?
to
The
this
still?
movement.
ku-movement
And who's the
ino.
target audience for the
audience
counterfeit? Who's going to show
Ndiani?
is going to look at the two actors or strutting around and they're going to say, this is the false and this is
Ndiani
the true. Who's doing
achataridza
that analysis?
achiona vatambi vaviri aya
The
achiti
world or
counterfeit
nothingness?
ndeyechokwadi.
Good. I hope everybody
Inyika
agrees
kana
with
kuti
that.
Nathan
And
Mutsinda
now we move to the
vachazvitaura.
statue,
Kufamba zvese anototenda
sorry, not the
nazvo.
statue,
Takuenda
the mountain, which is
mountain
3A, which is
inova
Adventism.
3A inova Adventism.
And who's the target audience for that show?
Target audience yeshow iyoyo ndiani?
Hopefully it's
This
all obvious.
movement,
Sorry?
this movement,
This movement is the true.
Movement ino
That's one of the actors
ndeyechokwadi.
on stage.
Itori mumwe
And
mutambi
Adventism is the
pastage.
fourth. That's another
Adventism
actor on the stage.
ndoimwewo
And
mutambi
who's watching this
pastage.
play
Ndiani
is
ari
going to
kuona
vote at the
play
end saying,
inoyi
this is the true and this is
achazovhota
the fourth.
pekupedzisira achiti ava ndovechokwadi ava ndevenhema.
the world,
Speak out loud.
the world, the Netherlands.
Mwati nyika manetheni mwati maLevites.
So
The
world.
Levites.
Oh.
Did you say Levites?
Pana hati
If you
maLevites.
said Levites, that was correct. Sorry, Mary.
Kana wati maLevites
You said Levites? Put
ndizvozvo.
your hand up if you said Levites. Okay, so you didn't. You said something else. So a few people here said Levites. Penny says Levite. It's the Levites.
maLevites.
This is why we've got a Levite Nethanim model,
Ndosaka tine
because we have two counterfeits. We have the counterfeit which we call Babylon, which is in three parts.
inonzi Babylon iri
And
mumapasi
depending on where
matatu.
you live,
Zvichifanira
what your
unogara
belief
kupi,
system is,
unotenda chii,
where your journey in
rwendo
life
rwako
is,
muupenyu
you can
rwuri
pick any
papi.
one of those
Unogona
three to
kunonga
suit yourself.
matatu
You
ivava.
can pick the USA, you
Unonga
can pick the
USA kana
papacy, or
papasi
you can pick
kana
Protestantism in general.
Protestantism zviri general.
If you're closer to home and you're an
Kana
Adventist,
uri musabatawo
then you can pick that one,
unogonawo kunonga
and the target audience then would be the Levites. So that's why we have this Levite Nethanim model.
iyi.
Does anybody have any
Target
questions on
audience
that?
ndiLevites. Ndosaka tine Levites
Yes, I'm a little confused. This is new for me.
Indane confusion
I-
zvitsva kwandiri
I
izvi.
nobody talked about two
Hapana
counterfeits
kambotaura
since
nezvemacounterfeit
today.
maviri.
I have never heard
Kusvikira
this,
nhasi handisambozvinzwa
but
izvi. Asi
it's not Babylon, Rome, because it's counterfeiting equality to us. Because Seventh-day Adventists, they're not counterfeiting equality. They go against all what we teach.
nezvatinodzidzisa.
I don't know how you can put those two
Handisivi kuti
counterfeits,
macounterfeit maviri aya
against the
vanomaisa sei
144,000.
against
Tell me.
144,000.
Okay, so hopefully everybody could hear Claudio and
Ndoimba kuti
understand
vanhu
his
vese vanga
question.
vachinzwa zvataurwa
So-
naClaudio vonzwisisawo mubvunzo wake.
I think Claudio is correct,
Claudio ari correct.
kind of. If I can say kind of correct.
Zvimwe zvacho
So
zviri
he
correct
said this is the
zvataura.
first time.
Asi ndekekutanga
I'll post these notes up later on. I know no one can see them. For some reason I can't log
manosi
on.
handichazomaposta.
He said it's the first
Asi
time
ndekekutanga
someone's told him
munhu amuudza iye
that there are two
kune
counterfeits.
macounterfeit maviri.
And I'm going to put a tick against that. I'm saying I agree with that. It's the first time.
Ndichatenda
And then I'm going to
nazvo.
say,
Then
but
ndozoti asi
give me a story.
ndipe nyaya.
Not Daniel 2. We've already done Daniel 2. We'll swing back to
Isiri
Daniel 2.
2.
Give me
Tatoita
another
Daniel
story.
2. Asi
Because
ndipo imwe nyaya.
Claudius says it's the first time he heard about this.
Claudius
And
iye
it's the
inguva
first time it may have been
yekutanga
explained this way.
inguva
But
yekutanga
it's buried
zvatsanangurwawo
in a study.
nenzira iyi. Asi
That unless someone points it
zvakavigwa
out, you
muchidzidzo
probably don't see it
chekuti
there.
kana
And you
pasina
don't see
achidaidzira
the connection
haugoni
to
kuzviona.
this
Enda
point that
uzoona
A.T. Jones is making.
matanidzwa kuri kuitwa nepoint
Acts 27.
ya8 Jones. X27.
So Acts 27.
Saka
And
X27
where would you look to see the two counterfeits
unotarisa
in
papi
Acts
kuona
27 that could
macounterfeits maviri
dovetail into this discussion,
anogona kupinda
even though it may
mudiscussion
not have
iyi.
ever been
Kunyange
explained
zvisati
explicitly this way?
zvakambotsanangurwa pachena
He wants to
senzira iyi.
venture what the two symbols are
Ndinoda
or
kutaura
models.
kuti
Someone
mamodels
said Castor and
maviri
Pollux.
ndiani?
It's not Castor and
Umwe ati
Pollux.
Castor naPollux, havazi Castor naPollux.
Whoever that was, no. Two ships.
The two ships,
Zvikepe
yeah.
zviviri.
Good. Tell me what the two
Adramyttis,
ships are, Claudio.
Ndudza kuti zvikepe zviviri
Adramyttis,
Not the names. The real life. What do they symbolize?
zvinomirira
United States, the government, the
USA?
state, and the SDA church.
Okay, I'll call it Adventism.
Ndichati Adventism.
Yes.
So I'm suggesting
Saka
that the
ndokusugesta
USA
kuti
and
USA
Adventism in that
neAdventism
story
munyaya iyi
whilst they're dealing with institutions, and while
tichidhila
you could classify
nema-institutions
our movement as an
tichigona
institution,
kuclassifya movement yedu
part of that story
se-institution.
is that both
Chimwe
of them are
chenyaya iyi
counterfeit, and
ndechekuti
that's why they
vaviri
get destroyed at the
ma-counterfeit.
end of the
Ndosaka
world.
vari
So I know
kuputswa
that story was
pamagumo
not
enyika.
told that way,
Unoziva kuti nyaya iyi haina
but
kutaurwa
that's
nenzira
why
iyi.
it's Adventism
Asi
in the USA.
ndosaka iri
And when you go
Adventism
back to the
ne-USA.
story that I've
Paunodzokera
suggested,
kunyaya
that
yandasugesta
when you take Levites
kuti ukatora
and
maLevites
Nethinims, and I
nema-Nethinims
need to stop here
ndofana
because Sabbath
kumira
is coming.
panapa nekuti
We're
Sabbath
just going to pause
yakusvika.
here, so someone will have to remind me where we got
Tichangopoza
to,
panapa munhu
and
anondirangaridza
we're going
patasvika.
to open Sabbath. I'm going to ask
Tichangovhura
someone here to
Sabbath.
pray
Ndokumbira munhu
for us.
But that
atinamatiro.
was very good. I'm sorry to cut
Amen.
it this way.
Hold
But
that
we'll
thought,
do it.
Claudio. We're just going to pray, and then you'll be the first person to speak when we come back in about 2 minutes. Hold that thought, please. So I really like that.
Tichangonamatira
Okay, so I'm going to take
Sabbath.
my video off and we're going to pray. And if you can all join us in prayer. Penny, would you be okay to pray? Just really speak out loud so they can hear you.
Dear Lord, thank you so much for this time.
Mwari tokutendai nenguva yatinayo.
We pray that you will be with each and every
Tonamata kuti munge muine umwe nemumwe wedu. Mutikomborerewo patinonzwisisa masecrets enyu. Muzita raJesu tonamata. Amen.
Thank you, everybody.
Totenda
Happy
munhu
Sabbath.
wese. Sabata rakanaka.
Happy Sabbath.
So, Claudio, back to your point.
Todzokera kupoint yako Claudio.
Yes. I cannot think about a counterfeit of the United States government
Andigoni kufunga necounterfeit
because
yeUnited
they are
States
the
government.
image of the
Nokuti
beast.
ndivo
So the
image of
counterfeit
the beast. Saka
usually
counterfeit
is
kazhinji
$1
kazhinji.
bill or 5 or
$1
10.
bill
It's
kana
not half dollar, something
$5 kana
that
10 is
is
half dollar.
not close to
Chinhu chisina
what we teach.
kufanana
It's not
nechinhu
equality, it's
chatinodzidzisa.
completely
Haichisi
different.
equality.
I
Chakatosiyana
don't know if I
zvachose.
explained
Handisi kuti ndazvitsanangura
my
here
thoughts.
pfungwa dzangu.
You've explained your thought really clearly,
Watsanangura pfungwa
at
dzako
least for me.
zvakajeka at least kwandiri.
Now, if you agree
Now,
that
uchitenderana
Babylon
kuti
was in
Babylon
3 parts,
yaiva
the dragon,
mumaparts
the beast,
matatu,
and the false
dragon,
prophet,
beast
that's
nefalse
one model of
prophet.
Babylon.
Ndoimwe model
But we
yeBabylon.
have another one which I
Asina
haven't
imwe
discussed.
model
Then
yatisati
you will
tataura
agree
nezvayo.
that the
Then
USA is in
unotenderana
that
kuti
story.
USA
It's a
iri
government
munyaya
power,
iyoyo.
it's state.
Ipower yehurumende
So we know that Babylon
istate.
has
Toziva
states,
kuti Babylon
and
ine
the
mastates.
other two, which
Mamwe
is
maviri
the papacy
inova
and
papasi
the
ne
false prophet, are both
muprofita
religion. It's
wenhema
the state-church
ireligion.
combination.
Kubatanidzwa
Because you have
kwestate
to have
nechurch.
a religious
Notofanira
sentiment.
kunge uine
Today,
religious
some people in the
sentiment.
movement call that religious sentiment what? They don't like, they
Vamwe
don't use the word
movement
religion, they use another word.
vanoshandisa sentiment yechitendero iyoyo
What word do people use
vachishandisa
instead of
vara
religion?
rekuti chii pachinhambo chekuti chitendero vanoshandisa vara ripi.
No.
Spirituality.
Culture.
Vamwe vati
Oh.
culture.
So that instead of using the word religion,
Pachinhambo
which is
choshandisa
a belief system,
vara
they use
rekuti
culture, which is a
chitendero vanoti
social
culture
norm or a
inova
social way
social
of
norm
looking at
kana
things.
social way
And to
yekutarisa
make
zvinhu.
culture
Kuita culture
work,
kuti ishande
you have to have laws or a
unofana
state
kunge uine
to
mitemo kana
impose those
state
cultural standards upon
inoimposa
people,
macultural
or
standards
you get
iwayo
the state
pavanhu
to
kana
impose
kuti unoti state
religious dogma on people. It
ngaisimbise
works the same way. So
zvinhu
that's where
zvanotendwa
the
nevanhu.
United States government,
Ndo
and it's not just
kushanda
the United States,
kwazvinoita.
I just put that down there,
Ndoapa
but it's other
hurumende
governments. But it's
yeAmerica
not the
haisi
UN as an
USA
entity.
chete.
You could put
Asi
Russia
haisi
there
United
if you
Nations
wanted.
apa. Unogona
You
kuisa
could put
Russia apa kana
United
uchida
Kingdom,
unogona kuisa United
France,
Kingdom kana
Venezuela,
France kana
all the
Venezuela.
countries of the
Nyika
world.
dzese dzemunyika
Some are much worse than
dzimwe dziri
others.
wese
They end up
kupfuura
becoming
dzimwe
the dragon
dzinopedzisira
power.
dzakuita dragon power.
And
Or that's the link, culture.
Ndiyo link
Now it
yacho
makes sense
culture.
for me.
good.
Kwandiri zvakumeka sense.
So we have the model of Acts
Tine
27,
model ya
that we can see the
27
two entities there,
tokona
the
kuona
United States
maentity
and
maviri aya
Adventism,
United States
and
neAdventism.
they're not the only
Havasi
counterfeit,
vega
but they end up
macounterfeit
becoming
asi
counterfeit.
vanopedzisira vava
So
macounterfeit.
we had dragon, beast, and
Taiva
false
nedragon
prophet,
beast nefalse
and we have
prophet.
another threefold
Tine imwe
entity.
threefold entity zvakare.
What's the other threefold
Imwe
entity
threefold entity
that Ellen
ndei
White talks about in the Great
inotaurwa nayo
Controversy?
naEllen White Great Controversy.
Protestantism,
Protestantism,
spiritualism,
spiritualism,
and Catholicism.
neCatholicism.
So you can look at it in that way,
unogona kuitarisa
Protestantism,
nenzira iyoyo,
spiritualism, Catholicism.
Protestantism, spiritualism,
Now we've got all three
Catholicism.
religious elements.
Tane
Claudio,
ma-religious elements
what would
matatu.
spiritualism be
Claudio,
in our
spiritualism
previous
chinenge
model?
chiri chimodel yedu
What would
yekare.
that equate to?
Zvinoenzana nechii?
In the model of the false prophet,
Model
the
false
beast,
prophet
Yes.
nebeast
dragon,
nedragon.
The
the
dragon. Good.
dragon.
And who did we
Dragon.
say the dragon was?
Saka takati dragon ndiani?
the world.
Inyika.
It's the world, but I'm going to put the
Asi
USA
ndichaisa USA.
because the
USA
USA is the one that's
Nekuti
driving
USA
the
ndiyo iri
engine that
kudrive
drives the world.
engine nekuti ndiyo
So
inodrive
you
nyika.
can see the USA
Saka
in a
unogona
political
kuona
framework,
USA
but you can also
mupolitical
see
framework.
it as
Asi
being
unogona kuona
spiritualism.
zvakare iri
But you can also go to
spiritualism. Asi
Protestantism
unogona kuenda
and you could
zvakare
put USA
Protestantism
there.
woisa USA ipapo.
as a spiritualism.
Yeah, under Protestantism
Pazasi
you can put USA.
peProtestantism
Under
unogona isa
spiritualism you
USA.
can put USA.
Pazasi peSpiritualism
And
unogona isa
I know
zvakare
Biden
USA.
has stepped down,
Kwezva kuti
but what was
Biden
Biden's faith?
akadzika asi
You can put
Catholic.
USA right there as well if you
Catholic.
wanted to. So you can end up putting countries
Biden
that
anotendawo
fit this model. You could go
Catholicism.
to
Saka unogona
Russia and you
kuisa
see the
ipapo.
same kind
Unogona
of
kuisa
idea.
nyika dzinotendawo zvakafanana
So,
izvozvo dzine pfungwa dzakafanana
A.T.
neizvozvo.
Jones is an extremely
Saka A.T.
intelligent and
Jones
clever
munhu
person.
akangwara
And what he
ari
wants to show
intelligent.
you
Zvaada
is
kuratidza
the definition of the gospel,
definition
and then
yeevhangeri
he's going to compare that with the mystery of
anozozvifananidza
iniquity, which
nemystery
is
of
exactly
iniquity.
what we in this movement
Zvinova
are required to
zvinhu
do.
zvatinofanira kuita
We
mumovement
see
ino.
two enemies,
Tinoona
if you
vavengi
like, if I can
vaviri
use that,
kana uchida
if I can use that
kana
term.
uchikona kushandisa vara iroro.
One of them is
Imwe yayo
Catholicism, and we
Catholicism.
could say the other
Unogona
one,
kuti imwe yacho
you could say the governments of this
unogona kuti
world, but I want to
hurumende
say the
dzenyika
United
ino.
States.
Ndinoda kuti United States.
But in a no, let me rephrase that. Let's go to Daniel 2. We've done Acts 27. In Daniel 2, we have the mountain,
Daniel 2 tine
which is
gomo rinova chii?
Adventism,
Adventism.
and then we've got the statue,
Tozoita chitombi.
and we can either call that
Togona
Babylon,
kuchidaidza chiti Babylon.
or I'm going to
Kana
say
kuti
we can call
tichangoti
it
tinoidaidza
Catholicism,
chiti
if
Catholicism.
we're going to make them
Kana
both
tichizviita
churches.
zviviri zvese izvi
And
machechi.
Adventism becomes the
Adventism
counterfeit for the
counterfeit
Levites.
yemaLevites.
Who, if you're going to have a
Kana
counterfeit,
uchizova
that means you want to trick
necounterfeit, zvoreva
somebody.
kuti une munhu wauda
But any
kutrick.
Adventist ever going to be tricked,
MaAdventists
let's call them
vachatrickwa
Levites,
here.
but any Levites
MaLevites
ever going to be tricked by the
vachatrickwa here
papacy?
nepapasi. Vacharasiswa
They're
here
not. They already
nepapasi.
know that the papacy is
Havarasiswi,
some evil thing.
vanotonyatsoziva kuti
They're never going to
papasi
think the
chinhu
papacy is
chakaipa.
some good thing and get
Havambofungi
tricked
kuti
into it.
yakanaka
So,
vobva
the,
varasiswa
so to have
nayo.
a counterfeit,
Saka
they
kuve
have to look
necounterfeit.
good.
Vanofanira kuratidzika
Who
kunge
does
vakanaka.
Adventism look good to?
Adventism inoratidzika kunge yakanaka kunani.
Levites.
Kune maLevites.
Levites is a synonym or a
MaLevites
pseudonym
chinhu
for
chakafanana
Adventist members.
nemamembers.
The structure of Adventism, the religion of Adventism, looks good to Adventists, no one else. Everyone else thinks they're crazy. So they have to be the target audience. And when we said who calls to the church and then the call to the world, we wanted to make a call to Adventism because we said who wants to be interested in this movement?
Adventism
The only people interested in our movement, on the 25-20 movement, would be Adventists.
vanoita interest movement yedu
So
kana
Adventism has to
ye2520
be the
yeAdventism. Saka
counterfeit
Adventism
for
inofanira
the
kunge iri
Levites. And then you
counterfeit
just go to
kumaLevites.
Catholicism and use the same logic
Ukaenda
to
kuCatholicism
show that
unongoshandisa
Catholicism
logic
ends up
yakafanana
becoming
neiyoyo. Uona kuti Catholicism
counterfeit
inopedzisira
for this
yakuita
movement
counterfeit
when you're in the
yemovement
world,
paunenge
anywhere
uri
you want to
munyika.
go.
Kwese kwaunoda kuenda.
Any
Kana
questions?
nemubvunzo here?
Hello, Parminder.
Yes, Mary.
Is there a counterfeit for the priest?
Kune counterfeit
Is
yemapriests
there a
here?
counterfeit for the priests? I don't think there's a prophetic model for a counterfeit for the priest.
Handifungi kuti pane prophetic model
Individually, we could get
yecounterfeit
snared
yemapriests.
into
Tiri
some
ma-individuals
false
togona kuiswa
theology or
mambure
strange ideology, and we could lose our direction by falling off into the narrow
direction
path.
yedu
If we fell
tichidonhera
off the narrow
munaro path.
path, we would
Ukadonhera
fall into the
munaro
wicked
path
world below.
unodonhera
But I don't
munyika
think that's the
yakaipa iri pasi.
definition
Asi
of a
handifungi kuti ndo
counterfeit.
definition yecounterfeit.
Alyssa said John the Baptist. John the Baptist is
Elisa ati
whom?
John the Baptist. John the Baptist ndiani?
Who's this movement if you're going to go
Movement
for John the
inoyi
Baptist?
kana uchitaura John the Baptist ndiani?
So this movement would be Jesus,
Movement inoyi ine iri
and
Jesu.
the counterfeit would be
Counterfeit anenge ari ani?
John the Baptist, you're saying.
ndo zvauri kutaura.
So that would be John the Baptist.
anenge ari John
And
the
then you're saying the
Baptist.
target
What
audience would
target
be the
audience
priests.
inenge iri priest.
So back in
Saka
2019, we could argue
2019
that.
taigona kuargiwa izvozvo.
But
Asi
at the moment, there is
panguva
no
inoi
competing force or
hapana
power or struggle
masimba
in this movement.
ari kutambudzika
If we did,
movement ino.
then they
Kana
would be
dai
the counterfeit, but I
tatinawo
don't think there
vanenge
currently
vari
is one. So I
counterfeit.
would
Asi
agree with
hatifungi
Alyssa.
kuti
If you're going to
izvi
make
zvaripo.
uh,
Tandotenderana
Elder
naElisa
Jeff or
kana ukaita
FFA,
Elder Jeff
John the
kana
Baptist,
FFA,
the first
John the
messenger,
Baptist
it
first
gets to a
messenger.
place where there's a struggle
Panozosvika
between the
panguva
two.
apo paine
And in fact, if you go
makakatana
to the
pazviviri.
story found in the
Ukazosvika
Gospels,
panyaya
you
inosvika
would see that
munowanikwa
the
mugospel.
disciples have to choose which
Unoona
leader
kuti
they're going to follow,
madisciples
whether it's going to be Jesus
vaifanira
or
kuti
John.
vaizotevera hani Jesu kana kuti
John
John.
6:66.
Pana John 6 verse
So at
66.
Sunday law, we know that the
Pasandelo
many will fall away.
tinoziva kuti
And the counterfeit, the work of the counterfeit is to trick and
basa
deceive.
recounterfeit
So the many are
nderekunyengedza.
taken away by what? If there's no counterfeit for the priest.
Kana kusina counterfeit yemapriests vachanyengerwa
Or who?
nani?
So I repeat what Mary's question is. I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to have to think about that. We've gone
Ndichazofunga
to
nezvawo
Daniel
handizivi.
11 verse
Taenda
41,
kuna Daniel 11
and
verse
she has
41.
said at the Sunday
Akati
law,
paSunday law
many fall away.
vazhinji vanodonha.
And the falling away
Kudonha uku
are people who were
vanhu
free who then
vakasununguka
go into
vanozoenda
captivity.
muutapwa.
And so the
Saka
captivity they go
utapwa
into
hwavanopinda mahuri
ends up being
hunopedzisira hwava
one of two options, I
imwe
would suggest.
yemaoptions
So
maviri.
then what you're going to
Saka
do is
zvaunozoita
to take,
kutora.
so maybe your model is
Maybe
correct.
model yako iri
So
correct.
we've got two
Saka
entities.
tine
We've got
maentity maviri. Tine
Adventism
Adventism
and we've got this
toita
movement.
movement ino.
Could call it the mountain or the stone.
Mountain
And then we say
Weston.
the people who look at
Toti vanhu
that,
vanozvitarisa
look at those two groups are the
vanotarisa
Levites.
mapoka
The
maviri
Levites are
aya
going to choose, make a
maLevites
decision
obva
between
vasarudza kuti
Adventism or the
vanoenda
movement. One's
kwaAdventism
the
here
true and
kana
one's the
kumovement.
counterfeit.
Imwe ichokwadi
And so
imwe icounterfeit.
Mary's question
Saka
was,
mubvunzo
well, who's the
waMary
counterfeit
ndewekuti
for the priests?
counterfeit yemapriests ndiani?
I guess
Ndofunga kuti
if you're going to go for verse
ukaenda
41
kuverse 41
and they're going to be taken into captivity,
vobva vatorwa
I would
kuenda
then, I don't know, I'm going to say,
muutapwa.
I'm going to agree with Mary. I
Ndogona
don't know if she's
kupfumirana
asking a
naMary.
question or she actually
Handisi tari
sees
kubvunza
this,
mubvunzo
that the
tari
priests
kutozviona. Ndobvuma kuti mapriests
also
zvakare
have a choice between
vane
Adventism
sarudzo
and the
pakati
movement.
peAdventism
They'll either
nemovement
stay
iyi.
in the movement, which
Either
is the
vanogara
true,
mumovement
or they'll go back
yechokwadi
into
kana
Adventism, which is the
vanodzokera
counterfeit. They go back into
kuAdventism
captivity.
inova counterfeit.
And if
Vanodzokera
we take the other
kucaptivity.
model,
Tikatora imwe
which
model
is Catholicism
inova Catholicism
and the movement,
nemovement.
if I change the word Catholicism
Ndikashandira
and call
vari
it
kuti
Babylon,
Catholicism ndodaidza chiti
and then I'll call
Babylon
it the world,
ndoiti nyika.
then we've said this is the test for the Nephilims.
Test
So the Nephilims have to choose between the world and this movement, the true, the counterfeit. But you could also say the priests do as well. So the options for the priest is they remain in the movement or they fall into the wicked world below. So the wicked world below would then end up being the counterfeit. They see some beauty in the world that motivates them to leave the true and choose the entity. So I don't know if everybody agrees with that. I don't know if Mary was just asking a question or she could see that, but I'm persuaded of it. It sounds like a good argument to me. If that's the point you wanted to make, I agree with what Mary has shown us. That, and as Alyssa had said, John the Baptist, we could have put that in FFA, or we could say this movement, the priest had to choose that one, but that's no longer a current one, and there's no schism in the movement. I don't know if there will be one, but that would be a counterfeit then. But as it stands, either the world or Adventism would then be the counterfeit for the priest, because we already know that some people in the movement leave the movement and go back to church, or they just fall into the world. So, was that the point that you were seeing, Mary?
Yeah, because I was wondering if there's anything that is going to trick the priest. I don't think it would be the papacy or the doctrines from the Adventists, because so far it has been proven to be false. It has to be something really, really close.
What do you think it is, and if you don't think it's Adventism or the world?
Probably from within. You have done a study. One of the study that you did was the enemy in the house. or within the gate,
Ndechekuti
something like that.
muvengi ari
Okay,
mukati
so if we're going to go to
memasuo
the enemy within the gate,
achienda
I think that was
muchidzidzo
California last
ichocho
year, maybe.
checalifornia last year chekunzi
If
enemies
we're going
within
to
the
do
gate
that,
kana tichidaro
then we'd have to explore what that enemy was. I was careful not to.
tofanira kuzoona kuti
I was
muvengi
careful
iyeye
to be vague
ndiani
about what that enemy
ndaiva
was.
vhegi kuti muvengi
I
uyu
would
ndiani
venture to suggest
ndinongosagestawo
that
kuti
that enemy
muvengi
within our
uyu ari
movement,
mukati
if we can
memovement yedu
point it to that,
togona kuzvinongedzera
is
izvozvo
not an individual,
haazi
but it's
munhu
an
asi
ideology.
ipfungwa kana
Because I think I
dzidziso
said
nekuti
that
ndakati
the situation that we find ourselves
situation
in
yatinozviona
now, if I
tiri
can call it a
mairi
falling away, is not people physically leaving.
haisi vanhu
They're
vari
leaving
kudonha physically
emotionally and
vari
intellectually.
kudonha
And
emotionally uye
they would then have
intellectually
to have a
vanozofana
gospel
kunge vaine
which is
ivhangeri
antagonistic or opposite to the gospel that
inopikisana
we teach.
neivhangeri yatinodzidzisa
And I think we could
ndofunga
probably
kuti
find
tinogona kuona
elements of
maelements
Adventism in their thinking
eadventism
and
mukufunga
elements
kwavo
of the world in their
maelements
thinking.
enyika
So
mukufunga
they
kwavo
wouldn't see
saka
equality in the same
havazooni
way that we
equality
see
nenzira
equality,
yatinoona
in the
nayo
same way that Adventism
yeequality
doesn't see
nenzira
it, and in the same
yakafanana
way that the world
neadventism
doesn't see
yainoona
equality in the
nenzira
same way.
yakafanana
They may
nyika
give it
inoona
lip service,
vanogona kungozvitaura havo
but
nemiromo yavo
essentially
asi
they've drifted away
vanenge
in their thought
vabva
processes.
mupfungwa dzavo
So if I can add your
kana
further thought to
ndichiwedzera
that,
pfungwa dzako
I don't know
ipapo
if you would agree
handisi
with this.
tinotenderana nazvo
I
here
suggested that the priest would
ndakasugesta
choose
kuti mupriest
Adventism or this movement,
anosuarudza
and the priest
adventism
could
kana
choose the
movement
world
iyi
or this movement.
kana kuti
So they
nyika
could either
kana
go back
movement
into
iyi asi
Adventism,
tikadzokera
or they could
kuadventism
go back into the
vanodzokera
world,
kuadventism
or
kana kuti vanogona
they
kudzokera
could do
kwenyika
what
kana
you
kuti
said,
vanogona kuita
and you borrowed,
zvawataura
I think, the
iwewe
title from that
wakwereta
presentation,
title yepresentation iyi
The
yakaitwa
Enemies Within the
yekuti
Gate.
muvengi ari mukati memasuo
Is that
edu
the title I said?
ndiyo title here
Is that the one I used? Something like that,
yandatashandisa
Enemy Within the Gate, which is a play on words from a Bible verse, actually. I don't know if
angori
people knew that.
mavara
It doesn't quite
akabva
say it that way, but it's
mubhaibheri
play on words. So what those enemies within the gates
muvengi
do
ari mukati
is
memasuo uyu
they choose
zvaanoita
elements from
vanosarudza
Adventism
maelements
and
ekuti
its
savata
views on sexism, and they choose
nekuona
elements
kwainoita
of the world
sexism
and its view on
votorawo
sexism, and
maelements
and
ekunyika
they end up
nemuono
agreeing with them.
wavanoita sexism
Either
vopedzisira
they leave the
vabvumirana
movement because of
nazvo
that, and
either
they're either going to go into the
vanosiya
world or into
movement
Adventism,
nekuda
or they
kwazvo
remain in the
kana kuti
movement,
vanoramba vari
and they're
mumovement
still taking on those
vachiramba
ideas in a
vachingovatirira
secretive
mupfungwa
way because
idzodzo
they don't
nenzira
want to
iri
physically
secret
leave,
nekuti
but they
havasi
don't really
kuda
agree with how things
kusiya
operate with an Adventist mindset
asi vada kuramba
of
vachioperate
equality, or
vaine
a worldly
mindset
mindset of equality,
yeequality
or a combination
yenyika
of the
kana
two.
kuti yeadventism kana kuti
So
yakasanganisa
I really
zviviri
like that
izvi
thought. Thank you, Mary, for
ndofarira
that.
pfungwa iyoyo mary waita basa naizvozvo
So I'm going to say
saka
the enemies within the gate
ndichati muvengi ari mukati
either remain in the
memasuo
movement
edu either anoramba ari mumovement
or they
kana
leave.
kuti anosiya
If they leave, they're going to go into Adventism or the
akasiya
world.
anoenda
According to
kuadventism
Daniel
kana
2, that's your
munyika
only options, the mountain or the statue.
maererano
Or
nadaniel
they
2 kana
remain.
kuti
And if they
anoramba
remain, I
arimo
don't think you
kana
can see
akaramba
that
arimo
clearly in
handifungi
Daniel 2. Daniel 2
tinozviona
doesn't give
pachena
that
daniel
idea.
2 haipi pfungwa
And
iyoyo
maybe the 12 disciples would show us
pamwe
that,
ma-12
where you
disciples
have a Judas in the
anotiratidza
camp that
izvozvo
ends up
kuti
really not
pana
leaving.
judas ari
I know
mukemba
he ends up
anopedzisira
leaving at the very end and killing
asingasiyi
himself.
ndozvati anozosiya pekupedzisira
But I
achizviuraya
don't think he actually ever
asi
left the
handifungi
movement.
kuti
He just ends up
akasiya movement
destroying himself.
akapedzisira akungozviparadza
So,
ega
if we're okay, I'd like
kana
to
zvakanaka
close the
ndoda
meeting now.
kuvharawo meeting
It's
izvezvi
9 o'clock. It's quite, no, 8 o'clock, isn't it? 8 o'clock. I haven't just in my clock. We've gone for just over an hour. Sorry for the technical problems. Hopefully we'll fix them. And I hope the study's been
ndinoimba kuti
helpful
chidzidzo
for us
ichi
to
chatibatsira
see
kuti
a few
tione zvinhu
things.
zvakati wandei
I'll have a think about what we've spoken about.
handisati
Hopefully each of you
ndafunga
will.
nezvatataura
And
nezvazvo
tomorrow we meet
ndoimba
at
kuti mumwe nemumwe wenyu achafunga
10.
nezvazvo
Is it Central time? And I'll recap this because there'll be other people who haven't listened to this.
tichazodzokorotsa
But
zvidzidzo
I'm
izvo
going to recap
nekuti
it for our
vamwe
small group.
havana
They'll get what they
kuzvidzidza
can. I'm not going to redo the
vachawanawo
whole thing.
zvavanowana
And if you
vachizodzokorotsa
can all
zvinhu
think about it
zvese
as well, if
kana
you
tichinofungawo
agree with
nezvazvo
this,
kuti tinotenderanawo here
with the many conclusions that we've come to,
nemaconclusions
the various steps
akawanda
we've gone through, and the
tasvika
final
paari
conclusion
final
that
conclusionwo yekuti
the Levites are the target
ndivo
for
target
one
yeimwe
counterfeit, the
counterfeit
Nethinims are a target for another counterfeit,
itarget
and
yeimwe
as
counterfeit
priests, we can
isu
fall into that
mapriests
same
tinogonawo kudonherawo
ditch or that same problem that they have old.
gomba rakafanana iroro
There's
kana
been a study
dambudziko
in the past
ravainaro
which was
pane
called
chidzidzo
Enemy Within the
chekare
Gates,
chakanzi muvengi ari
and
mukati memasuo edu
the suggestion that was made
suggestion
then was
yakaitwa
that those
ipapo
enemies that were
yaiva
in the
yekunzi
gate,
vavengi vari
they have
mumasuo
already
aya
rejected the message, but they
vakatoramba
don't
meseji
leave the
asi
movement
havasiyi
physically for
movement
some reason,
physically
they're not willing to do that,
havasi kuda kusiya
eventually they may, and if they did,
kana
they'd end up
vakasiya
literally going in the world
vanopedzisira
for
vakuenda
Adventism,
munyika
or
kana
they remain in the
muadventism kana kuti
movement
vanoramba
and they take on
movement
the ideology
votora
of the world, which might
dzidziso
call that
yenyika
culture,
togona
or of
kuti
Adventism,
culture
we might
kana
call
kuti
that their religious
yeadventism
belief,
kana kuti
and they remain in the movement because they don't
religious
want to
belief
leave,
yavo
so they give it
vanoramba
lip
vari
service.
mumovement asi havadi kusiya
I'm happy to
vanongoipa
close now.
lip service
I hope you enjoyed that study. I really was
tovhara hedu
benefited by it.
tofara kuti
I want to thank everybody
tava
for joining us.
nedzidzo icho totenda
Let's
munhu
close with
wese
prayer.
nekutijoina ngatifarei nemunamato.
Holy God, I want to thank you for your goodness and mercy, for your watch
Mwari
care.
vatsvene tokutendai nekunaka kwedu
Please direct and bless
netsitsi
us
dzenyu
as we try to understand the
titungamirirei
path that
nekutikomborera
each of
apo
us
tinozama
has been called to walk.
kuadresa zvinhu zvekare mumwe
We
nemumwe
know that
wedu
this is a very
takadaidzwa
narrow path
kuhondo toziva kuti uyu
and we
mugwagwa
don't have many options.
mutetete hatina
We either continue
maoptions
as the
tinoramba
path gets
tichienda mberi
continually narrower and
nzira ichiramba
harder,
ichioma nekuita
or
nhete
we end up
kana kuti
falling into the wicked
tinopedzisira
world.
tadonhera munyika yakaipisisa
Whether we go back to our old
zvisinei
Adventist
nekuti
ways,
todzokerawo munzira dzedu
or we go
dzechisabata dzekare
into the
here
world and
kana kuti
forsake
toenda
you
munyika
in a more profound way,
tokusiyai nenzira yakatsanangurika
help us to consider what
tibetsereiwo
our options really are.
kufunga nezvekuti maoptions
And may
atinawo
none of us,
ndeapi
or
ngapashayikwewo
those who are
umwe
already
wedu
there, stop
kana kuti vatowa
being those
ikoko
enemies that are within the gate.
ngavamire kuve vavengi vari mukati
Perhaps the
memasuo
worst place to be is someone who does not agree with this movement,
nzvimbo yakaipisisai
doesn't
kuva
find joy and
pairi
happiness
munhu anenge
in
ari mumovement ino
being a priest
asingawani
with our belief
mufaro
systems,
kuve
with our sense of identity and
nekuva
community,
nemabelief
and
systems
yet
edu
decide to
nesense
remain
yeidentity
in
yedu
this movement.
necommunity yedu oramba
Maybe
ari
theirs is the
mumovement
most
ino
painful
pamwe
place to be.
nzvimbo iyoyo kwavari ndiyo
If any of us feel in
inorwadzisisa
that
kana
void,
paine ane void iyoyi
may this prayer be
dei
the
munamato
beginning of
uno
a journey of recovery,
uriwo
of
kutanga
healing. May this study
kwerecovery nehealing
open each of our eyes to the great danger that confronts us, that we too can be deceived by a counterfeit if we allow ourselves to. In Jesus' name, amen. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. I had a really good time. There were 22 of us, which is really good. And we'll all meet at 10 a.m. Central Time.
tosangana na
I think the
10
meeting
a.m.
opens
Central
around 30
Time.
minutes before.
Meeting
So
opens 30
feel
minutes
free to
before.
join at least a few minutes before that. It's an internationally Zoomed meeting. That means there'll be translation.
International, kune
And I look
translation
forward to meeting you all tomorrow.
totarisira kusangana
Have a good rest.
mangwana zorurai zvakanaka.